So let's talk about this article that came out in the newspaper in the New York Times. What a puff piece, an exclusive puff piece, that Bill de Blasio and Charlene McRae are separating, but they're going to live in the same house on 11th Street and 7th Avenue in Park Slope, but they're going to freely date other people. And I say to myself, whoa. There's a number of reasons for this, and I don't think anyone has commented on it, so I'm going to give you my input. But before we do that very focus of the courtship of Eddie's father, that theme song, and the scope of the whole program, the love that a father had for his son and a son had for a father, is what propelled Bill de Blasio from the bottom of the ranks in the Democratic primary in 2013. Remember, our own Anthony Weiner, after having fallen from grace, had to resign from Congress, entered the mayoral race, and he shot to the lead. I'll never forget, it was Flag Day. And he announced right there in Forest Hills, which was part of his district when he was congressman, and everybody said, oh, he'll crash and burn. He shot right to the head of the pack of the 8 Democrats running. And he would have been the next mayor if he hadn't had his personal problems. Would have saved this city from the 8 years of Bill de Blasio and Charlene McRae, who took a wrecking ball to the city that we love. But let me get back on track. The one thing in the campaign that saved Bill de Blasio was the endless series of advertisements, political advertisements, that featured him and his biracial son, Dante. They were beautiful commercials. As much as I hated de Blasio, and I hated him then and hate him now even more. His claim to fame was when he was a city councilman in Park Slope, he was the best councilman at fixing parking tickets. That's it. He would fix parking tickets all the time. He became a public advocate, and let's face it, every public advocate uses the office to run for higher office. You don't need the position of public advocate. It's a fake, phony, fraudulent office that just is filled with patronage appointees, and all they do is use our tax dollars to run for higher office. So we have that. And then because of that commercial with Dante, the love that a father has for a son and vice versa, and it was very genuine. It came across in the commercials. Very well done. It propelled Bill de Blasio to victory, and then eventually he beat the Republican primary winner, Joe Lhota, who had been deputy mayor for Rudy Giuliani, against our own John Catsimatidis. Both of them had run against one another in the Republican primary. And then out of all the bad things that he did, and it was an extraordinary series of bad things, then all of a sudden the lockdown and pandemic hit in March of 2020. And Black Lives Matter, he's out there with Eric Adams every day with a Black Lives Matter shirt, and they're painting Black Lives Matter in the streets. They're professing support for Black Lives Matter. I will never forget. But under the cover of the protests that led to rioting, shooting, and looting by Black Lives Matter and Antifa, Bill de Blasio announced that he was pulling $1 billion from the NYPD budget. And he was proud of that. And then announced that, Dermot Shea, his lapdog police commissioner, and he was on board with it, along with Rodney Harrison, who was the number 2 in the police department, who's now in charge of the police in Suffolk County. They have a pox, all 3 of them, on their souls. They stabbed in the back every police officer who works, whether they're in blue shirts or they have white shirt immunity. Listen to the mayor back then. He was so proud in defunding the police by $1 billion. It's never been replaced. And the support that he had from his lapdog police commissioner, Dermot Shea.
The commissioner said publicly since then that if there's one place he would want to see money go if it came out of his budget, it would be for youth programs. He said that publicly, and that shows the caliber of the man, that he believes in a focus on youth. He said it months ago before all this happened. You know, it was a focal point of my State of the City that we're reorienting policing towards youth. We wanted to get more and more activity for youth.
Yeah. Destroyed the police department as we know it. A pox on all 3, de Blasio, Dermot Shea, and Rodney Harrison. But everything that Bill de Blasio has ever done politically is calculating. He calculates everything. Remember, he came out of Cambridge to New York to go to school, studied political science, NYU, Columbia. And he changed his last name from Vanna von Wilhelm to his mother's maiden name, Blasio, because he always wanted to run politically in New York. And he knew with a German last name, it'd be almost impossible to get elected. Ironically, Trump got elected, and the Bonanno crime guy, Eric Ulrich, got elected city councilman at Howard Beach. He's German, too. So that was not true. But it helps when you got a vowel at the end of your name. And he disparaged his father, Werner von Wilhelm. And he talked about how he got beat by him. He wanted to change his name because he was tortured by the memory of his father, who happened to be a war hero in the Pacific. In the Battle of Iwo Jima, Okinawa, was severely injured, came back, and was damaged permanently like so many other men who fought in World War II, the greatest generation. He disparaged his father, and yet he would say from time to time, but he would take me to Fenway Park to see my beloved Red Sox, Enrico Petrocelli, playing shortstop number 6. Then you look at the siblings, and his brother, who owned a steakhouse in Atlantic City, did very well, never changed his last name, nor did they. It was Wilhelm. Stabbed his father in his back for political gain. And then fooled you Italians out there, right? You know, he would speak Italian. Then he visited Italy, where his mother grew up, and he spoke a little Italian, marched in the Columbus Day Parade in Bensonhurst, and you were all going cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. And then he went out to Staten Island, Highland Boulevard, and a Goodfellas, the pizzeria, ate pizza with a knife and a fork. What a gavone! You should have realized. He was a fugazi Italian then, but you didn't. You wanted to give him a chance. Hey, look, married to a black woman, Charlene McRae, biracial children, new day, new way. And now they're claiming that they're not going to divorce, they're not going to separate, they're going to live in the same house on 11th and 7th Avenue in Park Slope, but they're going to be freely dating other people. And the way the New York Times says it, shame on you, old gray lady, to buy this hokum, is that it began with an offhand remark, why aren't you lovey-dovey anymore? And then all of a sudden it evolved by Charlene McRae saying, you can't fake it. Well, of course not. I don't know how she faked it all these years. She was a hardcore lesbian. She wrote about it. She was living with lesbians in Massachusetts. And then supposedly when they both worked in the Dinkins administration in the basement with Bill Lynch, who was the deputy mayor, had been Dinkins' campaign manager, their eyes locked into one another, and all of a sudden she fell in love with the Italian stallion. Now, naturally, from a man's point of view, it's like, oh, yeah, he was able to convert a lesbian, a hardcore lesbian who wrote about this. I believe it was in Essence magazine, how hardcore lesbian she was. And then they went on to have a family, a daughter and a son. You know more about Dante than you do the daughter. But the point is that it was all for political gain. Like Bill and Hillary, right? It was like one hand washes the other. You help me, I help you. And the idea was that when Bill de Blasio finished his term in office, that his wife Charlene would become the Brooklyn Borough president. Now, who negotiated that deal? Frank Carone. You see, everywhere you go, it's Frank Carone. So they go over to Brooklyn Borough Hall. They meet with Eric Adams. And this was the deal that was made. Eric Adams would be endorsed by Bill de Blasio in what was going to be a very lively primary. It turned out to be a lot of candidates. And likewise, Eric Adams would endorse Charlene McRae to become the next borough president to replace him. The deal was done until the summer of George Floyd, and then one day, Bill and Charlene are on a stage, right in downtown Brooklyn. Black and white demonstrators for Black Lives Matter are in the crowd, and they booed de Blasio, turned their backs on de Blasio, not to Charlene. And Charlene recognized that, man, I can't get elected now. So the idea of this is number one, Charlene can now run for political office and say, hey, we're separating to date other people, right? And maybe even in Hollywood, they'll come in and want to do a reality show about this. You know that. You know how freaky-deaky they are in Hollywood, so there's money to be made there. Secondarily, they can't divorce because they're being investigated on all different fronts, including by Danielle in a stealth-like manner from her law firm, very prestigious law firm, and she is the wife of our own Sid Rosenberg, a very good attorney. And they're being investigated by my wife, Nancy, a great attorney who is able, she's a great muckraker, doing a deep dive on where did all the $1.5 billion go from that Fugazi program called Thrive. It was supposed to go for the care of the emotionally disturbed persons who are everywhere, in the streets, in the subways, and in the parks, a danger to themselves and everyone else. $1.5 billion they stole. There is no accountability of where it is. There's never been an investigation because the Democrats have protected their own on this. And in fact, Thrive exists today in City Hall under a new name. Oh, Eric Adams doesn't want to tell you that. They're still spending $325 million a year on this fake program under a new name that's housed in City Hall. They don't want to tell you that. Tomorrow we'll do part 2. But the other reason, Lou, they don't want to file for divorce is that in the future, when all of these lawsuits get into court, this way Charlene will say, I can't testify against my husband because I'm still his wife. Oh, everything is calculated. They think that they can outsmart all of us. Quite frankly, they can outsmart some. But they cannot outsmart the commission now because I and Nancy are on their case. Sid and Danielle are on their case. Bo Dietl is on their case. And Frank Morano is on their case. We will prevail. We will hit them from every angle. They will not bamboozle their way around this. They stole $1.5 million, $1.5 billion that was meant to care for the people who can least care for themselves. They stole it. Both of them belong in jail. Lock them up, throw away the key. De Blasio and Charlene, you think you got over in the New York Times today? Think again. We're coming after you.